In this video, I wanted to show you a new update that I've made to my first VFX script called KeyMod. I've added two new randomization modes and made a small overhaul in how the user interface looks. So let's break it down. So this script is made in order to help you change the pitch of the notes that you're playing easily with semitones and octaves, and also modify your incoming velocity in a bunch of interesting ways. So the biggest change in this new script is two new randomization modes. And as you can see, the UI of the new script on the right is very different from the UI on the left. So let's break down what it can do. So let's connect a MIDI from FL Studio direct to battery so we can hear the drums here that have, as you can see, consistent velocity. And now I'm going to connect KeyMod 1.1. So as you can see, it does nothing right now. Once you start messing with the parameters, you're going to hear some changes. So you can, of course, change the pitch. This is very helpful if I want to switch to different drum kits. And you can also change it in semitones. So let's take a look at the new UI. So the old script had two sections, pitch and velocity, and the new script divides velocity into three different sections, and they're based on the order that the modification to velocity happens at. So you have velocity randomization first if you enable it, then you have multiplication and base offset of velocity, and at the end of all that there's velocity thresholds. So let's go over the new velocity randomization. In the old script, you only had a randomize button. In the new script, you have enable, and then you can choose the mode. So absolute was the old randomize button here. What it means is that it disregards the relative above and relative below knobs, and it just randomizes the velocity from 0 to 100%. So as you can hear, you can get some very wild results, and you can control it with the thresholds. So let's say I want randomization between 0.5 and 0.8 at the maximum amount. So that's a really nice way to control the absolute randomization and make it a bit more useful. But let's say I don't want to keep defining the thresholds and like check the velocity that I've used. Like here it says 80%, and then go back to the VFX script and say 0.7 till 0.9 because that's where my velocity was. So for that, there are the new relative modes. So you have relative percent and relative plus minus. Relative percent basically multiplies the original incoming velocity. So if I say relative above 10%, it can increase the velocity by up to 10% of the original played velocity. Let's exaggerate that and put it into like 50. So as you can see, I sometimes get very loud notes and sometimes they are more close to the original. But the drawback of relative percent is that it is based on the incoming velocity. So if I change the velocity here to be very, very low, you can see that here's how it sounds. I can't hear it at all. And if I enable the randomization and even put it into 100% above, it's barely going to make any difference because the velocity here is at 4%. 100% above 4% is 8%. So it would only be like here, which is also barely audible. So for that, there's also the relative plus minus mode. So this one doesn't care how much velocity is incoming into the script. It's going to in this case, randomize up to 100 velocity. If this is 100 velocity exactly, it could reach that. Even from 4, even from 0, it's going to add up to 100 to the velocity. Let's demonstrate. And let's disable. So the velocity relative randomization in the plus minus mode can help you get large randomization differences, which may be very useful in case you're using very low velocity input. Let's increase the input back again to something like this. So so far we've demonstrated with relative above, but what happens if you introduce relative below? So by default, it just lowers the velocity exactly the same as the above does, just below your played velocity. Let's demonstrate. And let's demonstrate in the percentage. As you can hear, usually the percentage mode is going to be less extreme than the plus minus mode. But what happens if you enable both of them? So basically, they have an equal chance of either randomizing above your played velocity or below. So it's like a coin flip that every time it's going to determine whether it goes above or below at random. Let's exaggerate the effect just to hear how wild we can get it. Now, sometimes if the relative below goes too far below, especially in the relative plus minus mode, you can counter that by adding some minimum threshold. And let's say it gets too loud to my taste, so I can also add a maximum threshold. You already hear immediately how that can help you control the randomization a bit better. So the really cool thing about this script, in my opinion, is that you get to control the velocity and it keeps randomizing at all times. So if I, for example, have a full track, I have it here like another synth patch that also uses the KeyMod script. So let's hear it without it. And now let's hear it with the VFX script that has some randomization. So as you can hear, it adds a very nice random flow to the MIDI notes that are very static. But the cool thing is that if you render an entire song with that, you're going to always get different results, kind of like a drummer or a keyboard player playing throughout the entire song instead of like recording an 8-bar loop. So let's try and consolidate these just to see how different they can sound from one another. I'm going to use low quality just to randomize it, just to render it fast. Great. So as you can see, if we line them up, we're going to see very different results, especially in the synth, because we've added like a much higher randomization amount. So let's start with the drums, for example. So you can really see like how this clap or snare is much louder. Let's hear the first loop. And this randomization just keeps occurring throughout your entire track, which can give it a lot of movement. Let's hear like different synth versions of that render. Like here, the bass note is very loud. And here I can barely hear it. So this can give you a lot of randomization that happens when real players play an entire song from start to finish, where not every note is going to be accentuated as much as you'd like it to be. There are some imperfections and a lot of cool things that are happening due to a human playing these instruments. So of course, my version is very extreme, just to demonstrate, but like if you wanted to use it more subtly, I would use like the relative percent mode and do it at like 10 or 20%, or even use the plus minus if I'm using like low velocity notes in there, so I can give everyone an equal amount of randomization with like plus 10 and minus 10 velocity. And that way I can ensure a lot of randomization in my sound. So yeah, just to show you, there's absolutely no effects, just the VFX script that's adding all of this variation. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You can download the script in my GitHub and via my Patreon as well. And you can check the GitHub and like add suggestions for new scripts, for new ideas in the existing scripts if you have, and just stay updated if I release a new version as well. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.